I think this is going to be a shorter video than my usual. I just wanted to, this is just more, I think stuff related to self-sabotage. And yeah, I mean, all of my videos are impromptu, but this one feels, yeah, definitely it's impromptu, but there's a feeling that I wanted to express that I feel coming up. So yeah. I notice within myself that there is a challenge with accepting myself as I am. And as I start to accept myself more, as I start to release some of the past, although it seems I can gradually deepen more and more into that, there also is this reaction that comes up just very automatically of discomfort. And I notice there's kind of like a retreat and a reliance again on my coping mechanisms, which in this case kind of serve to hold in place those trauma patterns and unhealthy patterns. The stuckness, the coping mechanisms hold in the stuckness. And there's a big difference between a coping mechanism and holding space for yourself, or even like basic self-care. So like me in the bathtub right now, that's self-care. I don't consider that coping. It's a way for me to help ground me and relax me, to tune me into my body more. Even though sometimes I still get stuck in my head, even in the bathtub, but usually it's a way for me to try to reconnect with myself and hold space for myself. I can think of other things that are just really simple, like drinking hot tea, getting a massage, going for a walk, being in nature, getting good rest, meditating. So these are things that reconnect me with myself and are, yeah, recentering. I feel like coping mechanisms are different. They are stress responses that are meant to dull an experience or avoid it. And usually what they do is they create some kind of sense of disassociation. It might not be a full like disconnect with your body, but it I feel usually is at least a partial disconnect with it. So I feel coping mechanisms are just methods for some degree of disassociation, whereas self-care is more about reconnecting with yourself, holding space with yourself, grounding, and feeling safe. And sometimes feeling safe in confronting challenge and taking risks. So it's not just like being stuck. Yeah, so this is what happened for me last night. I had an experience where it felt like my body was able to release some tension and to ease more into a sense of safety. And I even interestingly noticed with this that just how pervasive the identification with the mind is. And it's just so strong. It's just the seeming experience of living in my head, the seeming experience that everything comes from here, you know. And that even when I try to direct my attention towards something else, it's still coming from a mental place. So even when I try to connect with my body more as a whole, it feels like it still comes from that mental place of like shining a spotlight from my head, you know, in a way. And last night there was like a gradual loosening of that, and I think, beginning of a sense of it's weird to explain, but a broader identification with the body, and that the body's reactions and sensations are just as much me as the mind, as thought, that they're not less than, they're not under the dominion of something in my head. Which is weird because our scientific model on the surface seems to reify that idea that we're in our brains and everything else is like something controlled by the brain. So it kind of solidifies this mythology or paradigm that we are mental. Although more science has come out showing evidence that that's not the case, that we have complex neural networks both in our heart and in our gut. And just in general, that the mind and body are not so separate, that it's really like one integrated whole. So even the science is shifting on that. But that aside, you know, it's just a paradigm. But it reflects and seems to reinforce the paradigm we just kind of grow up having, because that's what it seems to be. That's the experience. It seems to be like I'm up here. But yeah, there was a softening of that last night, in the sense that that I'm not identified with the mind, that it's more the whole of the experience. And it was brief, you know, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it caused a permanent shift or anything, but it was definitely an insight. And yeah, when I got home last night from that, I noticed like there was like an anxiety, or not even, I guess an anxiety, but also an emptiness, or like a need to feel something that came up. And so I just tried hooking up with someone, and part of my rationalizing of it is like, oh, I'm going to approach this in a mindful way. I mean, you know, I think I really knew that that wasn't the case. That's not where it was coming from. But I mean, yeah. And so that, you know, it didn't happen like that, obviously, and it ended up feeling like just another empty experience, or not even just empty, just like kind of forced. It didn't feel like the space that I really was in at the time, and it was like I was kind of forcing myself to do that because of this seeming sense of an emptiness and or anxiety, and probably what I just needed to do last night was just maybe get in the bathtub or do something more mindful, or rest, or yeah, I think I just needed more of like a low-key night. And I let this impulse just kind of drive me. But it did sort of reinforced the lesson from last night because I didn't get my heart didn't get what it wanted, which I already knew it wouldn't. And I knew it wasn't about that. It was about the coping mechanism that wanted what it wanted. It wanted detachment and escape. But I think what was interesting is that the detachment and escape wasn't satisfying. In like a very, very basic way, it kind of was, but not really. It just wasn't what I needed at the time. And now I'm just processing it because I am being very distinctly aware that this pattern's happening, where there seems to be some kind of beginning of a shift, and then the coping reaction kicks in, and it almost feels like it disconnects me. So it's interesting. It's like, on the one hand, there's a sense of a deeper connection forming, and then there's this opposite mechanism that then creates a disconnect. So I don't know if it really cancels it out, but it at the very least clouds it. So I think that's a good thing for me to be aware of. Yeah. And I didn't really sleep much last night. I'm kind of running on empty, and I mean, I'm not at rock bottom internally or energetically, but I am stretching myself thin. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm exactly at my best right now, but this is what's coming up, and I just wanted to process that a bit and get it out there. I think a lot of people could probably identify with this kind of pattern, and I think it's just good for us to be aware of it, because we don't have to give into that. We don't have to give into the coping. All right, thanks so much for listening.